Hey all, Tom Moran here from Tom's Big Spiders, finally ready to debut my Psalmopoeus Genus review. I've been working on this one for quite some time. I actually announced it over a year ago that I was going to be doing it, but I've had a very difficult time of getting footage, especially of my P. Erminia. She's incredibly shy, and I'd only catch her out for glimpses here and there, and just wasn't enough footage to put it together. Well, I finally got some good footage of her, and we rehoused my Victori and my Ecclesiasticus, and I got some great footage of them, so we are ready to roll on this one. Now, I'm really excited about this one because this is a genus of tarantula that I ignored for some time. I wasn't into many arboreals early on in my keeping career, and I really had a thing for Poecilotheria species, so I spent all my time grabbing those up. Well, I finally got a Cambridgei, fell in love with it, and became obsessed with the genus, and have been trying to track them all down. So this video is going to contain some of my experience with the 6 different species I've kept, along with some notes for them. We'll go over housing, we'll go over a little montage of how to rehouse, as that's the spot that's going to give people the most trouble, all the basic information for them, and we've got some good images of my guys and gals to show off. So really excited about that. So enough talking, let's get into the actual video. All right, up first we have my Psalmopoeus Cambridgei, or Trinidad Chevron. This one I picked up as a freebie, but strategically made sure that I got it as a freebie in 2015. At that time, it was a little 1-inch sling, and I put it in a 32-ounce deli cup. Well, the first thing that impressed me about this spider was its voracious hunting technique, where it would burst out of its burrow, snatch a cricket, snatch a roach, and go right back into its burrow with lightning speed. What impressed me next was its growth rate. This one hit 5 inches in year 1, which is really fast growth rate for a tarantula. I actually just got 3 new slings from my buddy Charles that I'm dying to raise up because this girl's getting old and I always want one in my collection. And so far I've had them for about 2 months and they've already molted twice. So again, I'm seeing that really fast growth rate, which is quite frankly remarkable for a spider. Now, besides being voracious eaters and fast growing, mine has also been quite visible, and even the little slings that I have now are usually out and about. I can catch them out when I pop in the morning, which is great because this is a gorgeous spider. There are not a lot of spiders out there with green tones, and this one obviously has those green tones, although some will report that theirs are a little more brownish. Mine, as you can see here, does have that verdant green. Now, this is a large species with adults hitting over 7 inches. This girl here was stretched out the other day, and I got it right at the 7-inch mark. So it's a bigger spider than some of the other Psalmopoeus species. She's currently in a extra large critter keeper. However, I'm going to be moving her to an Exoterra tall, one of the 12 by 12 by 18 inch ones, and I'm going to fill it with lots of foliage so she has cover, because I have noticed that if they have some cover, they will be more likely to venture out a bit and be more visible. So for folks looking for a faster growing tarantula species, you don't need to look any further than Psalmopoeus Cambridgei. So next up we have Psalmopoeus or Psalmopoeus pulcher, or the Panama Blonde. These guys I picked up back in August 2016 as 3/4-inch slings. I had 3 of them. Unfortunately, 2 of them matured to be male, but this here is my big female, and what a glorious girl she is. At the time when I got them, I put them in 32-ounce deli cups, and much like the Cambridgei, I was immediately impressed by their hunting and their feeding. They put on decent size, and within the first year, my female hit 3.5 inches. My males matured out shortly after that. So really good growth rate, although obviously not quite as good as the Cambridgei. As an adult now, mine is out actually quite a bit, and as I'm doing this, I'm looking around my tarantula room, and she's sitting right out in the side of the glass, and you'll see here she's sitting out in the side of the glass as well. When trying to put together footage for this video, it became difficult to catch some good footage of some of my specimens, but this girl was nice enough to pose for me several times so I could get some decent shots of her. Now, as far as temperament is concerned, some report having more defensive specimens, while others have talked about having ones that almost seem tractable. Mine here is very skittish and shy overall. Like if I jounce the container, so she'll immediately bolt back to her burrow. Now, as an adult, she's about 6 inches. As you can see, she's quite hefty and luckily visible. She's right now in an Exoterra Nano Mini, one of the 8 by 8 by 12 ones, which seems to be a pretty good size for her, although I'm kind of eyeing some other alternatives for her to maybe get her into something a little bit bigger with some live plants, because she is a beautiful spider and I definitely want to be able to show her off more. All All right, up next is the most elusive of my Psalmopoeus species. This was the last one I was able to get any decent footage of, and unfortunately it's not the best footage because some of it I had to shoot through the glass. She was out exploring, but this is my Psalmopoeus or Psalmopoeus armenia or Venezuelan Sun Tiger. I know a lot of people love that name, and it's basically because the spider has that thick black base with those beautiful orange markings on them, and sometimes the abdomens get quite bright orange as well. I received mine as a 2-inch sexed female, one of the few sexed females I've purchased in recent time, back in 2016. She's originally in a 1-gallon mainstay container, and at that point she burrowed behind it and remained very, very shy and elusive. Even when I rehoused her into this one here, I don't catch her out all that often. However, I've spoken to other folks that say they have much more bold and defensive spiders, with some saying that they'll throw up the threat posture if caught out and about rather than bolt to their hides or burrows. So be careful when working with this one. You never know quite what you'll get. Now here I was able to get some photos of her, and boy, this was kind of tricky because I had to take the top off to get a better look at her. But as you can see, just glorious. That black coloration with the orange is just amazing and stunning. And when you get her under light, it really pops. All right, next up we have my Psalmopoeus or Psalmopoeus ecclesiasticus, or the Ecuadorian olive gray. I picked this one up as a 1-inch sling from Fear Not Tarantulas in August of 2019 and kept it in a dram vial to start. But like the other species in this video, it ate like a machine and I had to rehouse it before too long. So in February of 2020, I rehoused it into a 2-quart cylinder, and it didn't take too much longer before I had to rehouse it after that. These guys really grow quickly. Despite the common name that says olive gray, their colors under the light appear more of an orangey, tangerine-y coloration to even gold. When I catch this one in certain lights, she really comes across as a vibrant gold. I've used her picture for a thumbnail on another video if you want to see it there, but she really shines. Just a gorgeous spider, and one that I really wasn't sure of what to expect when I got her. You can see there that the olive gray might refer to underneath the legs where they're a little more grayish, but the top of her, man, it's just a stunning coloration overall. I recently rehoused her and put her into an 8x8x12 acrylic enclosure, and she's been a little bit more shy since being in there. When she was in the cylinder, she was out and about more often, but if I come in early in the morning or in the evening after the lights go off, I can usually catch her out on the hunt. And this is one of the few spiders that when we went to rehouse her gave Billy and I quite the runaround. She didn't go right into her enclosure like most of mine do. She actually went up and she got her 15 minutes of fame and screen time. One of the things to know about these species is they are true tree spiders, and folks have reported that when they go to rehouse them, instead of them shooting into the burrows or behind cork bark that we provide for them, they will sometimes shoot straight up, which means up and out of the enclosure. Also, Psalmopoeus species can jump, so that's always something to be aware of, and it can be quite the startling event when you're trying to rehouse a spider and it jumps and lands on you. So always keep that in mind when doing the rehousings. But this girl, overall, she just kind of walked around a little bit around the edge and gave us a couple laughs and gave us a good video to show what happens when spiders don't do exactly what you plan during a rehousing. Now she has just molted again, and her molt was about 4 inches, so I'm guessing she's around 4.5 inches now. I've been told by some people the adults are a little bit smaller at around 5.5 to 6 inches, and somebody else told me that theirs was pushing 7. So we'll have to see as this one grows what type of size she puts on. I will say she's a little behind as far as growth rate compared to my Cambridgei, which is the largest specimen or species I have of this genus. But again, only time will tell, so I'll definitely do an update once she's molted a couple more times and we'll see where she's at. But overall, an absolutely stunning spider, and one that needs to get a little bit more attention in the hobby. And now here's my Psalmopoeus or Psalmopoeus Redunkus. I have to admit, the thing that first attracted me to this spider was the name Redunkus, which reminded me of Redunculus. There, I'll call myself out on it. But I love these little guys. You can see there, they've got this bronze brown look, really handsome looking spiders. One of the smaller species, as far as the Psalmopoeus are concerned. Mine right now is about 4.5. I have two of them, two females that are about 4.5 inches, maybe 5. I don't think they've gotten quite to 5 yet. And I've heard folks say that they max out at around 5 inches, but still they're a potent little 5 inches. I got my two as 3/4 inch slings in June of 2016. And although they were very shy as slings, as you can see here, they're out and about quite often now, which I love because they're such cute little spiders. And I would say, as far as temperament's concerned on these guys, they are much more bold than some of my other Psalmopoeus species. However, they don't come across as defensive, at least mine aren't. Again, talk to other keepers and you might find something different. Temperament can vary from specimen to specimen, but my two girls have actually been rather laid back overall, and I appreciate that because I like catching my spiders out in the open. Out of all my Psalmopoeus species, these two are my most heavy webbers. As you can see here, this was originally an enclosure with a couple plants in it, and they smothered the plants with webbing, and in one case ripped the plant right out and deposited it into the water dish because apparently they didn't want it there. So they will do some webbing. Also, one of my females has a burrow. This one here, you'll see as she backs up, her burrow is actually on the ground as opposed to up higher. Usually once they become a little bit larger, you see more of those arboreal tendencies, but this one has two burrow entrances, both are on the ground, and she tends to hunt from the ground like a terrestrial spider would do. The other one, on the other hand, has a burrow entrance that is up high like a true arboreal, and she hunts more up high. So kind of interesting little difference in there, quirky little personality difference between the two of them. Now, they are both currently as adults in Exoterra Nano Talls, or the 8x8 by 12 inch models, and those seem to be a good size for them. If I do swap them out, I may just move them into the acrylic ones, or I just might clean out their enclosures and put them back in there and try them again with new plants, because I did like the way they looked with the plants in there. It makes them pop out, especially when you got a spider that's more bronze in appearance. You get a little bit of that green in the background. It really makes it pop. And here's one of my girls sitting out there. That's the one that's more arboreal. You can see to the right of her is where the entrance to her den is. So unlike the other one that is on the ground, this one is up high. But two awesome little spiders. Love them. Definitely recommend them. And for people who want to get into the Psalmopoeus genus, this might be a good starting spider because they are a little bit smaller and, at least in my experience, have been a little more laid back. But obviously look at the comments to see what people say and see if it's the right spider for you. And here we have one of the more popular species in the hobby right now, and probably one of the most popular species of Psalmopoeus due to its appearance, the Psalmopoeus Victori, or Darth Maul, or Mexican half and half. I like to go with the Darth Maul, being a Star Wars fan, but either way, a gorgeous tarantula. As you can see here, the front part of it is more of a black-blue coloration, a dark coloration, and the back half of it is more of a reddish, which gives it a very striking appearance, almost like somebody spliced two different species or two different colored tarantulas together. It's just, there's really not much like it in the hobby, and I think that's why it's so highly sought after. I picked up mine as a 1-inch sling back in August of 2019. And again, not to sound like a broken record, but like the others on this list, it was an amazing eater and a fast grower. I originally started it in a dram container, but within a few months had to rehouse it to a 2-quart cylinder, which she did very well in, but again, continued to put on massive amounts of size. And now, as an adult, she's recently been rehoused into one of the 8x8 by 12 acrylic primal cage enclosures. And as you can see here with the right lighting, this is a beautiful tarantula. Just seriously one of the coolest looking spiders available. And the whole Darth Maul thing makes it kind of cool too. Now, I actually get to see mine out quite a bit, and she ventures out every once in a while to either go hunt, or I've caught her in the water dish, and that's even during the daylight hours when I've been in my tarantula room working, which is really cool. So out of the ones that, are more secretive, this one seems to be a little bit more bold and comes out a little more often, which when you're buying a spider that looks like this, you obviously want to see it as much as possible. Now, mine's continued to eat great. Before this video, I dropped in 3 large crickets, and mine came out, grabbed them all up, scarfed them down, and went back to her hide to eat. So I'm hoping that growth rate will continue. Now, as far as size, I've heard that the females can get to be 6 inches to 6.5 inches. My girl here is probably pushing 4.5 or so. So in a few months, we'll get to see, but again, I will keep you updated. I'm hoping she hits the 6.5 inch mark because that will make it the second largest Psalmopoeus species that I have, and I can't imagine having a spider that's that massive with these colors. Again, one of the most beautiful tarantulas in my collection, and there's a reason why these are so sought after in the hobby. So now that we've seen some of the species that I keep, let's take a moment to look at what we can keep them in as far as enclosures. Now, there's a lot out there, and a lot of times you'll hear people go out and spend a lot of money on enclosures and say that it's the best enclosure for the spider. Please keep in mind that a Sterilite container, if set up properly, can be just as good, if not better, enclosure for a tarantula than, say, an Exoterra or a fancy acrylic. It doesn't really matter how much money you spend on them as long as they are set up correctly. And although an enclosure may be a little bit milky, that can sometimes be beneficial to the spider because it's going to block out some of the light and it's not going to be able to see you as well, so it might be a little bit calmer. Something to think about. There are great options out there for people that want to spend a little money or even a lot of money. And what I'm going to do is go over both of those in this upcoming section so people have a better idea of what to look for when they set up their spiders. So let's start by looking at some sling enclosures. The first one we have here is a spice jar. I picked these up on Amazon. I think they were 16 for $12, so you honestly can't beat it. A lot of people like these because they're mostly clear and very cheap. Next one up is our basic dram vial. This one here has a P. cambridgei in it. These work great for smaller slings. Just load them up with a little bit of substrate, moist substrate on the bottom, cork bark hide, some sphagnum moss, and let your spider go in there, do some digging and some webbing. Next up is the AMAC boxes. These are popular in the States. I'm not sure if they have them overseas, but the most popular size, this one here, which is about 2¼ by 2¼ by 4 or so. These are very popular for slings of all types. However, I like to have a couple on hand for them. So I'll also have larger ones like these here. So if you have a larger sling, maybe 3/4 of an inch to an inch, that'll give you some more room. And then over here, we have the cylinders. This one has my P. Erminia sling in it. I got these from Fear Not Tarantulas, but you can find them at a variety of container stores, also on Amazon. Again, for the small holes on there, you want to use a Dremel tool because if you try to use a soldering iron, it kind of makes a mess out of it and just melts the plastic. But these are great as well. This one here is about 32 ounces or so. And of course, 32-ounce deli cups work great, and I've used them before with no issues whatsoever. Next up, we have the juvenile enclosures. Again, with juveniles, as it's a subjective term, we will say Psalmopoeus species. They're about 1 3/4 to 2.5 inches or so. These are the ones that have outgrown their sling enclosures, need more space, but you're not ready to put them in their adult enclosures yet. Here we have the 1-gallon mainstay container you can find on Walmart or various versions on Amazon. They're very easy to make into enclosures. You can just burn the holes in using a soldering tool. They offer enough space for it, and they only run about $2.50. You can fill them with substrate to here, put the cork bark in, put the sphagnum moss. Gives a spider plenty of room to continue digging if it would like to. Here are the plastic cylinders that you can also get off Amazon or container stores. Again, they offer a decent amount of depth. For this harder, thicker plastic, you will want to use a Dremel tool to make those holes, though. Don't try to burn them in. It can make quite a mess. And these are great because they offer a lot of depth for the spider to continue its digging, also to include an arboreal setup up top so the spider can do whatever it needs to do. The next one over here are food storage containers. Many different companies make these, so I won't bother naming a brand, but they run about 5.2 liters or 5.4 quarts, and they run about $7 each. These can be a little bit milky, which can be a deterrent. However, they are stackable, and those holes can easily be either burned in or put in using a Dremel tool, which makes them quite convenient. They hold plenty of substrate and offer plenty of depth for an arboreal spider. And finally, we have our adult enclosures. This one is a Sterilite container. There are a couple different varieties of these, one of which is about 4.5 gallons, one of which is about 6 gallons, but they make good arboreal enclosures. They are stackable, which is great, makes them quite convenient, and they offer a decent amount of depth, being about 11 inches, 11.5 inches high or so, and gives them plenty of room. You will want to include some extra foliage in there, so if your spider wants to go out and explore and get to the water dish, it's got some cover, but they make great enclosures. Second one here is a extra large critter keeper. These run about $17 to $20 or so, depending. If you buy them in bulk, they're usually cheaper. Much like the Sterilite, you want to make sure, because it's a wider open enclosure, that you fill it for some foliage in case they want to web and have some room to hide when they go out and explore. But these also work great for larger arboreal spiders, and I have my P. cambridgei in one right now. And then over here we have an Exoterra Nano Tall, I believe it is, 8 by 8 by 12 inches. These are very popular in the hobby, especially over here in the States. They are beautiful looking enclosures, although I would replace the top part with the drilled plexiglass as opposed to what they come with, which is screen. But they offer great visibility. They're glass, so they're easy to clean. They don't scratch easy, and they're good for the smaller species of Psalmopoeus. And finally, we have an 8 by 8 by 12 acrylic enclosure. We have 3 different companies currently in the States making these. We have Primal Cages, Herpcult, and Tarantula Cribs. All of them make beautiful cages that work wonderfully for arboreal species. Again, they offer a lot of clear visibility and make for beautiful setups if you want to include a plant or something like that. These are a little more pricey though, and will run you anywhere from $55 to $70. Now that we know what to put it in, we're going to talk a little bit about rehousing. What I've done is put together a montage, including some clips from many of the rehousings, including the species seen in this video, so folks can see kind of how it's done, and I can kind of give some pointers on what to look for and what to do when rehousing yours. Keep in mind, these are a New World species, and many folks will point out that they lack urticating hairs, but remember that spiders that lack urticating hairs are more likely to use their fangs as a way of defense. So that should always be in the back of your mind. Not to scare you, but you need to be informed and need to be ready for it. So in this section, we're going to show some tips and tricks that will hopefully help you keep your rehousings calm and get your spider from point A to point B with little to no fuss. Now, Psalmopoeus species have a well-earned reputation for being very fast spiders, with some of them referring to them as teleporters. If something is going to go wrong, it is likely during a rehousing. So what I presented here is a bit of a montage of some rehousings of some of the spiders featured in this video. Now, the trick is to always stay calm, to prepare ahead of time. This is not a species you want to trifle with if you're not comfortable rehousing spiders yet, but I have found that you can usually maintain control and keep them from freaking out if you're just very careful. So you can see here one of the techniques I use. Instead of trying to get them directly out of the original container and into the new one, I will drag them out into a larger container, cup them, and then use the cup, or here in this case a bottle, to get them into the new enclosures. I've found that the majority of them, if given a spot to go down and hide behind, like here we have a piece of cork bark with some sphagnum moss, they will go down, hide behind there, hunker down. In some instances, you may have a spider that clings to its cork bark or is wrapped up in webbing and kind of hiding out in there. Then in those cases, you can take the entire piece of cork bark out and place it into the new enclosure. As you'll see here, you got to be very, very careful about it. Keep in mind, Psalmopoeus species are fast and they can jump. So there's a point there where that spider, if it got spooked, could have jumped off, but luckily it clung to the cork bark and we can get it into its new enclosure here without any incident. Now, for larger specimens where the fear is they're going to get out and about in your house and create a situation where you've got to wrangle a large spider, what I like to do is use some cardboard. So as you see here, I have a cardboard cutout that goes over the catch cup that prohibits any place that the spider can escape as it goes from point A to point B in the catch cup. And as you'll see, it goes right up in here. Now in a moment, we're going to place another piece of cardboard. You'll see here as I carry it over to the Exoterra, I have a piece of cardboard that will fit the top of that Exoterra Nano that will again prevent any place the spider can escape. And then what we'll do is calmly coax the spider out of the catch cup into the new enclosure. There's nowhere for it to go but down and into the enclosure. And we have another safe rehousing. Here we have a situation where the spider is not quite cooperating. And I put this one here because you should always hope for the best and plan for the worst. And this one here, the spider did not go right behind the cork bark. There was too much light there. It went up and out. Keep in mind, these are tree spiders, and many report that their spiders, if they don't go into the new hides or behind the cork bark, will bolt upwards, which can leave you in a situation where you have a spider that's out and about. Here, we kept our cool. We got the spider back in, put the cap on, and the spider was safely rehomed. And once again, we have a situation here where we are dragging out the spider, so we're not trying to reach into that tight enclosure, which would put our hands in the way of getting bitten. You'll see I have a larger plastic tray that I'm using to corral the spider, and those paper towels, or in case the spider bolts, it will stop and hide beneath the paper towels. But what we do is get it out in the open, then cup it. It makes it much easier and keeps our hands out of the way, and then the spider safely goes in the enclosure. Now, as mentioned throughout this video, all of my Psalmopoeus species have been awesome hunters, ravenous eaters. I've never had an issue where I've had to give them pre-killed prey, but know that if you don't have prey items that are small enough for them, you can drop in pre-kill at the openings of their burrow and they will eat. As slings, mine were great hunters, and I fed them small roaches or small crickets or even small mealworms. Usually I feed my slings twice a week because I'm trying to get them out of that delicate sling stage. Once they hit the juvenile stage, I will slow down the feeding to once a week or so. And in those instances, I will feed them a larger prey item. So medium cricket, medium roach, even some of them large roaches, they will take down larger prey items. For adults, I feed my adults once a week or so, sometimes every other week, depending on the size of the meal. Now, again, these are not rules for feeding. This is just what I feed my spiders and how often I feed my spiders. Know that you can feed them a number of different prey items, including crickets, roaches, mealworms, superworms, and locusts. Also know that you can feed your spiders once a week. You can feed your spiders once a month. Pick a feeding schedule that works well for you. If you feed your spider a much larger meal, whether it be a small sling or a larger adult, then you definitely don't need to feed them as often. Now, for folks wondering about temperatures, they'll be relieved to find that they do well at room temperatures, or 65 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit, or 18 to 24 degrees Celsius. Basically, they can take temperatures down to the mid to high 60s and do just fine. I've proven it because several of mine were raised in periods where the temperatures went down that low, and they continued to eat and grow fine. Mine have been kept mostly in the 70s, with my summer temps sometimes hitting 80 to 82 degrees. And remember, higher temperatures may lead to faster growth rates. So if your temperatures are naturally in the 80s, you will probably see faster growth than somebody who keeps their spiders in the 70s. Now, as far as the H word, I do not mention humidity in my videos because it is not necessary to measure humidity or specific humidities in your tarantula enclosures. However, what you do need to know is Psalmopoeus species do appreciate some moisture, especially as slings and juveniles. One of the ways we make sure that they have moisture is through moist substrate. So I keep the substrate moist when they are slings, and I keep the substrate moist when they are juveniles. They seem to be a bit more adaptable when they get larger, and I've seen my specimens do quite fine when the enclosure dries out a little bit. However, I do moisten down the substrate every once in a while, soak it down, and let it dry out in between. I also make sure that they all have access to water dishes at all times, and I have seen them drink. For folks that want to do a little supplementary spraying, that's fine, but recognize that any water sprayed will evaporate much more quickly and will not give your spider a very long opportunity to drink. However, if you spray at night and evening before you go to bed and turn the lights off, some of them will come out and siphon the water off of the glass. All right, so again, some folks will come on and ask if these are beginner species. I would say for the majority of people out there that are just getting into keeping tarantulas, these would not be a species to start with. Again, it's going to come down to those rehousings. If you want to pick up a Psalmopoeus species, they are wonderful spiders, don't get me wrong, but you want to make sure you have your rehousings down because, again, if something's going to go wrong, that's where it's going to happen. And these guys are known as being quote-unquote teleporters, especially the slings. When you see video of teleporters, it's basically a spider that starts off here and in the blink of an eye is over there. They move faster than the human eye can follow, and that's important to consider. So make sure you've got your rehousings down, your basic husbandry down before you tackle one of these awesome spiders. Anyway, they are amazing spiders, absolutely beautiful ones out there, something out there for everybody. There are bigger ones, smaller ones, more high-strung ones, more laid-back ones. I definitely encourage folks that are progressing through the hobby looking for something to get them ready for the old world species, because a lot of folks will use these as kind of a stepping stone to keeping the more defensive and faster old worlds. Then definitely give these ones a shot and check them out. I will say a little note from people who have kept both Poecilotheria and Psalmopoeus species that many folks will say that their Poecilotheria are a little bit easier and calmer to deal with than their Psalmopoeus. So just a little heads up there. So that will do it for this one. As always, if you enjoyed it enough to subscribe, very much appreciate it. Click the little circle right over there. If you'd like to check out more videos, see what I'm about, you can find them over there. If you'd like to comment, I love getting comments. I read all comments and respond to all comments. Just know it may take me a little while because I tend to get a lot of them. That will do it for this one. As always, guys, stay safe and we'll catch you all next time.